abrupt intro ending. You know what I think I got to do with that is it's got like the music. This is a video podcast. This is a Johncast podcast. But like, I wonder if as a podcast listener, you just hear that music and you're like, okay, just what is this? Like maybe I need like words to the intro. I don't know. I'll figure it out. If you are watching on Spotify, I'm on Spotify. I'm on YouTube. This is the Johncast podcast. Also, thank you to all of those who were able to vote for me for Best of Madison. That voting is done through June 30th. Now we just wait. I don't know how this works. I've never done this. That I'm assuming they just contact you, or maybe they don't. I don't know. But thank you to everyone who participated to, number one, nominate this podcast and then get it on the ballot and then follow through with that one vote in the month of June. I really do appreciate it. And like I said, if we win, maybe I'll talk to Ian's and I'll say, hey, pizza party, and it could be fun. But thank you to that. You can check out johncastpodcast.com as well. Go there, sign up for the newsletter, and you'll get really cool newsletters when cool things are happening with this podcast. Today's guest recently retired from the world of broadcast television. He's been the lead anchor on NBC 15 in Madison, Wisconsin since 2005. And he's been so fortunate to cover stories in 30 countries and on all 7 continents. That's a fun fact about John Stofflet that I did not know until this last week. John Stofflet, retired TV news anchor, is what he says on his. Oh, he's let the beard grow out a little bit. Oh, how's
I'm going
that?
for the Letterman look here.
Oh,
it's gonna take a while.
Would you really go as long as Letterman? Because he's got like, oh, you wouldn't. Okay.
I don't think so, but for 42 years, I haven't been able to grow facial hair, not because I couldn't, but I couldn't have it on the air. So as a rebel, a free retiree rebel, now that's the first thing I did.
That is so funny. So if you're watching on Spotify or on YouTube, you get to see John Stofflet for the first. That's interesting. Like, how's it? I mean, because obviously you've probably had like vacations where you just kind of let your facial hair grow. But that's going to be, what's that like to know like, oh, I guess I really don't need to if I don't want to.
Well, TV news is a lot about, the look, the clothes, the neckties, the facial hair or not facial hair. And so the glasses, sometimes that does kind of dictate your life. And so it is kind of nice to just not have to worry about, what time I'm getting up, what time I have to get to work, and I don't have to shave. And after the years that I had, traveling around the world and being on schedules to get stories done and get to the next country and the next place, it's kind of nice to just be able to chill. I have to tell you, the retirees have all told me, you'll love this club. And so far, 2 days in, I do, John.
Well, that's part of my question. So since 1983, you've been in the TV world. So how are you going to fill your time?
Well, if people who watch NBC 15 or they're on my Facebook page know that I'm a big kayaker. So I will be doing a lot of kayaking. I'll be doing volunteering for a couple of organizations I love: Badger Childhood Cancer Network, Second Harvest Food Bank, groups that I've worked with throughout my time here at NBC 15. And a lot of travel. My wife, Anna, and I love to travel. She has a family that live in Sweden. And so looking forward to that. I'm 62, which is somewhat early. Some people think to retire, but a lot of people, I think I read that that's starting to be the average age now.
Oh, fun.
Yes. People are just, they want that extra time to do the fun stuff. And
so yeah, I was going to say, so you've been to 7 continents and now you're just going to keep going to different. Are there any new countries on the list besides Sweden?
Yeah, I mean, I've been on assignment to 30 and traveled to about 45. And I'm trying to think if there's any place I haven't been that I really want to go. Well, I guess one of them would be Norway. I'd love to go there, but I'm going with a group of travelers connected with the station to Iceland in October, but already been there once. So I'm game to go anywhere. I also love just traveling around Wisconsin. There's so many hidden gems around here that people just don't know about that are great.
You mentioned Iceland. I've never really researched Iceland. I've never been there, but that's a place to me that sounds like, I want to go there to see the Northern Lights, basically. I know I don't even have to travel that far to go to see the Northern Lights, but I feel like if you go to Iceland, there's a really good percentage chance that you're actually going to see them. Like, that's something I've never seen before, and Iceland would be the spot, I think.
Yeah, that's what this particular trip is to go spot the Northern Lights. And of course, Mother Nature is her own boss. So you're always at the whims of nature and cloud cover and atmospheric conditions. But Iceland is a great place to do that. We were lucky this summer, earlier in the spring around here. I didn't see them. I was asleep at the time, but a lot of people had saw great displays here. But it is a fantastic world, you know. And I was so fortunate traveling for either Nat Geo Channel or King 5, the NBC affiliate in Seattle, to see it and go all these places like Antarctica, Australia, you know, Asia, and have someone else pay for it, because on a broadcaster's salary, that you know, as you probably know, it's not easy to afford all that. So the key is to get you know, to get an assignment to go cover stuff, which is really fun.
So since we're talking about the countries, you have to give me your top 3 countries you visited. So top 3. I saw no particular order. Just these are the ones you're like, man, I remember that trip. I loved every second of it, or something like that.
Here's how I do it. I break it down into natural splendor, people, and then the all-around experience. And I would say natural splendor, it's hard to find something more spectacular than Antarctica. Okay. You are standing in the middle of 200,000 penguins. They come right up to you. They're not intimidated by us. The smell is overwhelming at times.
Really?
If you've ever been to like the penguin exhibit at the Viola Zoo, you know, I mean, just a couple of penguins make a lot of smell, but visually, it's just spectacular. Antarctica for just the mountains and the fjord-like passages and the just sea lions and penguins. It's unreal. As far as the people, it's the Irish. I mean, going to Ireland is just, they are so fun and so welcoming. They generally love Americans. And third, the all-around experience, I would have to say, is New Zealand. I've been there 4 times for work, and it's spectacularly beautiful. There are many more sheep than people in that country, and but people who are there are nice and funny, and there's a lot of cool stuff to do. Like, I jumped off a building with a cable on my back in Auckland, 70 stories. That was interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. So I wanted to ask you about some of the crazy things you've done. But Antarctica, Ireland, New Zealand, those are your top 3. I did look up, because when you said Antarctica, I was like, that's crazy to be in a spot where there's not a lot of people have ever been. Like, just step foot. Like, there's about 4,000 people there in the summer months and about 1,000 over the winter each year. But that's kind of crazy that you get to go to that place that, like, a high percentage of the humans on this earth will never set foot on.
Yeah, and you know, it's a little daunting getting there. We were on an expedition ship, was about 120 passengers or so, and for those who can see video, I'm doing a major wave motion with my hand, but that's what it's like crossing the Southern Ocean to get down to the sub-Antarctic and then the Antarctic. And you go to bed at night and there are icebergs floating outside, and all you can think of is, you know, Titanic. And on the deck, they're watching all night. And it's a place that part of the excitement is, you know, if anything happened, it's not like you can just be evacuated easily from Antarctica. It's so you do feel like a true adventurer there. And that was a Nat Geo Channel project where I went down to do 10 stories on everything from penguins to the Shackleton expedition. He was a famous explorer that got stranded down there and saved all of his crew and men somehow in those conditions. So you're pretty lucky if you, in this business or any business, if you have the opportunity to just experience as many things as I have. It's I just feel really fortunate.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned jumping off 70 foot, like some sort of bungee, right? You've in the NBC recap, NBC 15 retrospective, they showed pools of Jello. You've jumped in, you've bungeed, you've been in some sort of flying contraption, you've wrestled a bear.
Yes.
So like how many of these, when they say, hey, go wrestle a bear, you're like, yep. Or do you have to think about some of these things? Because I don't know if I could be bunging, like all I'm thinking about is that cord snapping or that bear slapping me
Yeah.
across the face.
Well, it's funny that, in New Zealand, there's a little bit of competition with the Aussies. The Kiwis and the Aussies don't get along, and
Mhm.
as you're ready to jump, it's a cable. It's like the stunt guys use in Hollywood, and there's a cable on your back. It's the
Okay.
700 feet up,
Oh,
and cars are just tiny, like little, matchbox car size, way down below. And there's a plank, and you walk off, and this cable, you free fall for a second, and then it gradually slows you down. But as you're
okay.
about to walk, the Kiwi that's running the 3, 2. Now hold on a second. Who gave John the cable for the Aussies? Give him the good one. You know. So they do all this stuff where they and then they make you wonder if the cable's going to hold, and so
Oh
when
my
you
God.
go and it works, it's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
My first take doing that, I got to the bottom and I was so excited. My photographer was just ashen in color, and he said I wasn't rolling, and he was serious. I
Oh
had to go
no.
two more times.
How does that
Um,
happen? That's crazy.
it was rare. He was a really good photographer too. It was rare that happened. But the bear, which now would, it's probably a good thing. People don't, for humane reasons, and that
Yeah.
force a grizzly bear to wrestle people. But that was really, they had trained this bear. Not only was it 800 or 900 pounds or whatever the thing was, they had trained it to do takedowns. So it could grab you by the leg, drops you down, and it also, bears are territorial, so they tinkle on the wrestling mat and then roll you in it. And that's not something you get out of your clothes easily. So don't wrestle a bear. I don't know that anybody does that anymore, because it's it obviously, that was in the 1980s, and there was a different standard for animal acts, as I guess I
Absolutely.
would call it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I
Hmm.
think you, just to let you know, you and Mike Lucas have both wrestled bears.
Oh,
So I didn't know if
uh,
you knew that.
Lucas, probably, it was probably Victor the wrestling bear. He came through town once a year, and they'd get the media to do previews, and then get people out to,
Yeah.
headliners at the time, or whatever the bar was, to pay to watch people wrestle a bear.
Wow. That's crazy.
And Victor's reward was like a bottle of Coke at the end of it. He would hold it like this, hold it and just drink it.
That's
It's probably
insane.
the same bear.
Yeah, it probably was, honestly.
Yeah.
Um, but from Bears to Badgers, I know you're a Badger sports fan. How much of a
Yes.
Wisconsin Badgers fan are you? And do you have which sport do you like to attend the most?
Well, John, from day one, I've always been a Badger fan. I was born in 1961, and it really caught on in the 70s. And I moved from Madison. I mean, my dad used to take me. We'd watch Rufus Roadrunner Ferguson at Camp
Mhm.
Randall, and we went to a few games there. But when I moved to the Fox Valley, I missed Madison so much, that I started watching the Badger hockey broadcasts on Wisconsin Public Television on the
Mhm.
weekends, because they'd play them up there. And I just became this hardcore fan, Paul Brown, Bill Howard calling those games. And then they won the national championship in '77. And they had this, and when I got to school, the first thing I did was buy football tickets, season football tickets, basketball tickets. That was Coach Caulfield at the time, Bill Cofield, and Bo Ryan was an assistant.
Okay.
And then what was the other thing? Oh, yeah, hockey. Hockey was so fun. It was at the Coliseum. It was 8,600 fans, and it was just a madhouse. And and in 1983, my senior year, I went out to Grand Forks for the national championship, which Wisconsin won.
Okay.
And there's something about winning a national championship in a hockey town like Grand Forks. And the Fighting Sioux at the time, as they were known, were not in the final that year, but they were. A lot of them were there. So I've had season football tickets for a long time. I love following the volleyball team. I only watch when they're on air or listen to you. I have not. I don't think I've been in person yet. It never worked with my schedule. So now that I'm retired, I'm looking forward to that.
Oh, I'll get you some tickets. We'll go to so when is the last volleyball match? You've never been to a volleyball match, like, ever?
I don't think I have. I did when the Olympics. I can't remember what year it was. Pete Waite was coaching at the time, and we went down and did some feature stories. But no, and my friends tried to get me to go, and working nights, it was always difficult during the week,
Sure.
and so I really look forward to that because that is just a dynamite program. And then women's hockey. I mean, what
Mm.
year was it? We won both. Was it 06 or 07? Someone out there knows.
I think
It
it's
was 06 maybe.
yeah.
Yeah. The men and women both won, and so it was great. And of course, one last sports memory. As when I was a freshman, I was in Og Hall, the old Og Hall, and with a little black and white TV, and watching Mark Johnson and Bobby Suter and win the miracle game. And I still remember the windows being open, and you could hear people just yelling around, from the dorm rooms when Mark scored. And then he scored twice. He never really gets as much credit as he should because he's
Sure.
such a humble, quiet guy.
That's
in that
amazing.
big
So
game.
that was obvious. That was a replay, if I'm correct in understanding. Like the championship game was a replay, or was it live?
I think it was live because it was in Lake Placid.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, and I just remember, the thrill. Then after that, John, they had this big rally because they brought. It was also the hockey champions, and Eric Hayden, and I mean, just there were just so many exciting moments from the Winter Olympics. So I've been a long time fan. I was there for the bounce pass play against Illinois, and I was glad to see that included in the highlight reel before the games, because that was, of course, we ended up losing the game on a long field goal by Illinois, which was very frustrating. But I digress.
Was Al Toon involved with that bounce? Well,
Yes.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Al Toon and Jeff McNall. What was his name? Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Someone will correct me.
Well, we're going to get you off to a volleyball match for sure.
Yeah.
Because they're just, it seems like they're in this kind of sweet spot in the program where they just are everything's running smooth, and they're just trying to make sure they, fit the right pieces in and just keep that thing going at a very high level for several years. And that's what Wisconsin football is trying to get to as well, is to kind of get the fires burning. You just crank out season, get better and better, and keep replacing. And the transfer portal has opened up so many options for all these programs. But how excited are you for the Luke Fickell era? Because I'll tell you what, like, he comes in, and all of a sudden you see like all these names popping up of guys coming to Wisconsin, and they're bringing in quarterbacks, and it seems like it's a little different as a Badger fan, because you're like, okay, well, let's see how these quarterbacks are going to do. Yeah.
I can't wait to see it. First off, a tip of the hat to both Paul and Jimmy for being stand-up guys and really achieving a lot with the program. And it's hard when that happens. That happens in our business too, where I was fortunate to leave under my own terms, but you don't always get to do that in coaching or as a news anchor or whatever the case may be. So, and of course they'll land on their feet. They already have. And, but Fick, I'm really excited to see. There's been so much off-season publicity about all the changes, his enthusiasm, his, the videos he's done, I just think is very engaged. And I want to see if, like all the fans, I can't wait to see if all these changes and all these recruits we're getting are not just, hype from a publicity standpoint, but actually going to turn things around. And not, and I think they will. I mean, I just think he's a phenomenal coach, and with Longo there, and I just think they're gonna do great. It's exciting, and it's not that far away. I mean, we're a month and a half, or just about 2 months away, and I think it's funny how, just to digress momentarily about, when I was a kid, when I was in school, Dave McClain turned things around at that time, an 8-3 season or a 7-4 season was miraculous because, we were pretty bad for a while. And then when Barry came in and things really picked up, and that's why I still kind of chuckle sometimes when we have a 7 or 8 win season or a 9 win season and people are, they should have done better because it used to be pretty bad.
Yeah, no,
And
that's
we've
true.
come a long way.
For sure. Yeah. And looking to get back to even better now with Luke Fickle at the helm. So we'll see how that goes. Did you speak to a lot of, like, throughout your time in Madison and broadcaster since '83? Did you speak to a lot of sports stars? Because I know you interviewed President Obama, might be one of your biggest, I would guess. I don't know, you tell me, movie stars. How many sports stars or local sports coaches or athletes did you interview too?
Well, we, of course, I covered the Badgers in the Final Four. I went to, I never went to a Rose Bowl. The sports guys did all that.
Yeah.
But when I was in Seattle, when the Supersonics were there, we covered a lot of the team there. And then I covered the Olympic basketball team, went down to Puerto Rico when the Team USA was, I think, playing Puerto Rico in it was a Caribbean competition or something. And, of course, I've gotten to interview coaches like Barry or, Mike Leckrone, who is, basically part of the football program in many ways. Athlete-wise, it's funny, I talk about President Obama. The first thing we talked about was Wisconsin, because it was a week after they lost to Duke in that championship and had beaten the undefeated Kentucky.
Yeah.
And he was a big fan of Frank Kaminsky. And so we had fun talking about that. And then we had to talk about tax reform, which isn't quite as interesting. So I'm sure as soon as we're done here, I go back to Mark Johnson, who I've had a chance to talk to, and it's so funny because the guy is a legend in the hockey world, and he's just so humble. If you ask him about the Miracle Game, it's just like his dad. They were just kind of stand-up guys that, like with Mark, it's about his team, and so it's been a joy. The President Obama thing, I'm not sure how much time we have, but real funny. It was, I came off the set and an intern had answered the phone after the 6th, and they said the White House is on the phone. And I was like, yeah, and the Queen of England's in the parking lot, I figured it was a prank caller or something, but it was the White House. And they said it was Thursday night, and they said, can you be here? The president wants you to come interview him on Monday morning. I'm like, what? Well, and it was, I think what it was, it was never really explained to me why I was invited, but I believe it's because Speaker Paul Ryan, was in our district here in our viewing area. I was one of the older, more experienced anchors in the market at the time, and they probably wanted Wisconsin, Ohio, these critical states. And so they asked me, and that was really cool. We went in, and you're waiting to interview a president, which would be nerve-wracking. And I had the privilege of interviewing a lot of celebrities prior to that. So I was kind of used to walking in a room and seeing Julia Roberts sitting there. The first few times it happens, it's like, holy crap, that's Julia Roberts,
Right. Yeah.
But they told us, you're going to get, some people were really nervous, you're going to get in there, and he's just like, President Obama is like just a guy from Chicago who's down to earth. And he was very welcoming. And as I said, the first thing you want to talk about was Frank the Tank and the Badger basketball team.
That's amazing. That's so cool. I want to go a little bit more to the overall business of TV news. I wanted to get your opinions kind of on how it has changed from now when you're retired in 2023 to maybe even from '83 and in between. What have you noticed is the biggest changes in the TV business?
Well, the biggest thing is in the '80s when I started, it was the only game in town, and we didn't have a phone with a news feed on it that we could look at ourselves. there were 2 newscasts. Most stations only had 2, 6 and 10. There were no local morning shows. I think Channel 3 at that time had a 5 o'clock news and a noon show, but most stations had a 6 and 10. And if you, as a news consumer, wanted to know what was going on, you had to stay up for the 10 o'clock news, or wait for the paper in the morning or the afternoon, because there were, 2, sometimes 3 papers, depending on the city, or radio news. Now, just use NBC 15 as an example. It starts at 4:30 in the morning, 4:30 to 7, 11 to noon newscast, 4 p.m. newscast, 5 p.m. newscast, 6, 9, 10. And the web, that's the big thing is, digital is now the first and foremost thing, because we're all on that platform, and it's, digital first. You want to get stuff out there. So it's changed tremendously, where you used to have to wait for things, to now it can be right in your fingertips, which can be great. But the danger in it is that journalists always have to remember it's better to be right than first. And if you can do both, that's the ultimate. If you're first and you got it, and it's got to be accurate, and then you're cooking with gas. It's changed so much, and also the way we gather news. The fact I could take this phone right now, and with a switch back at NBC 15, if I were still working there, would be weird now. They could put me on the air, through this phone from anywhere that there's a signal, and it'd be live, and it looks like a camera, like the old camera, 2 or 3 person camera crew. Technology's advanced, and of course, because of social media, the stakes are, I think, even higher, because every news consumer can participate on these platforms too. It used to be, if you didn't like something someone was saying, you wrote a snail mail and mailed it in, and then the station decided whether. Well, now you can go on a social media platform and say whatever you want. It might get eventually blocked or dumped, which is good for free speech, but can be, nasty at times. So that's changed.
Yeah, these are all, like, I remember growing up, and that's what it was. It was 6 and 10, and that's
right.
Actually, I think there was a noon too in Mankato, Minnesota. It's the station KEYC TV 12. I would watch. It's the only station we got, but yeah. So I remember that, and now interesting, all the way to the internet. And you talked about, being right, not being first. And that's a whole interesting concept in itself, because you'll see something reported online, and sometimes it's not 100% accurate.
Yeah.
And then, but then it's like you're allowed to just like change it as it goes along. Obviously, reporting new facts, I get that. But the part of the problem is, like, sometimes people don't see those new facts, and they're like, "You're lying. That isn't what happened." And you're like, "Well, no, actually, we updated the story." And then everybody checks in at different times, and then people say, and then it just gets really squirrely. And you're like, "Were they lying? Is this false information, or what? Did they up?"
Right.
It's crazy, man. I don't even, honestly, John, real quick. Like, when I see something, now you got me going. When I see something online, and it's a story, it's overwhelming sometimes as a consumer, because and I'm not saying anything with NBC 15, because the majority of the stuff you guys you nail. I'm just saying, like, I feel like I get a part-time job sometimes. I'm forced to get a part-time job to be like, this is the story. Now I have to go online and research every aspect of it, and what's kind of like true, and what's an opinion, and how accurate. And it's exhausting, because it's like, I didn't sign up for a part-time job to figure out what's true and what's not true.
Yeah, I think what's happened is that with the rise of cable networks, there are clearly partisan, left or right networks that sometimes it's in the stories they choose to cover, and then other times it's in the way they choose to cover them. Sometimes an editorial decision is made by omission, like not having, but this person says this. And, I think we have to be careful that we don't get to telling people what we think we want them to hear, or what they should hear, than to just give them, here's what's happening. The other thing that's hard, and for news consumers, and I understand this, is the the social media apps, it's like a news scanner feed. Every county has one, Rock County, whatever, where someone listens to the scanner and puts stuff up.
Oh,
We
sure.
don't put scanner traffic up until things are verified. And a lot of times we know, let's say a crash was fatal, we know it, but until we get it confirmed, we don't report it. And then people are like, why aren't you saying that 3 people died? I know 3 people died. It's like, yeah, but the authorities haven't said that. You
Right.
can't take that back. So it's, again, better to be right than first. So people see these things, or they're on Nextdoor or whatever, and they go, well, it's right there on the, how come you're not saying it? It's on the Nextdoor. Or the podcast guy, or the guy with the blog down the road says it's true, and you're not reporting it. You're lying to me. It's like, well, no, sometimes we are working to get second source confirmation. So it is tough. I think things also look like fact, and in the world of AI, it's really tough. Somebody could take what I'm saying right now and turn it into an ad for Trump or Biden, and I haven't said anything about either of them, but you could piece words together. It's scary.
Yeah. And now that you just said the words Trump and Biden, they've got they got the audio.
They've got the 2 they needed. He did it. Yeah. No.
No. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a different world. It's also, I think, in order to appeal to their hardcore viewer audiences, and this is, whether it's a left or a right wing on cable, again, they know what people are going to want to watch and listen to, and sometimes the benign sort of middle of the road stuff, people will say, well, I don't want to watch, I want my own beliefs reaffirmed, and so they pick a channel that that says, well, their guy or their man or woman is right,
And you talk about, like, I heard it on the scanner. Why aren't you guys reporting this yet? And that goes back to just what it's created. It's created, everybody wants their news in seconds, in minutes. They don't want to wait. Like we talked about, when you started in TV broadcast, you'd get the news at 6 and 10, and then you didn't have any more information till the next day. And even that information was a little dated.
And there was plenty of time to gather it. And I think of just like when I started in the business, I started at WKOW, but across the street at what was my station, NBC 15 then. At that time in the 80s, there were, Rick Featherston was doing the 6 and then Dave Crawley was doing the 10. But in the meantime, he was at City Hall, and they'd spend the day working sources and all that. Well, now you've got these newscasts and digital to feed. There's not as much time to do that. And a lot of the times it's called an MMJ, a multimedia journalist. We used to call it a one-man band, and I'd say one-person band, where they're shooting it, they're writing it, editing it.
Yeah.
It's amazing what they can do, but it's a lot, and then to still have the time to make sure you spend enough time actually reporting and get it all done in time when there's so many mouths to feed and various day parts. It's a lot. So it's and the 24-hour cable channels also changed things. That was starting about the time I left J school. I remember my professor saying, Ted Turner Professor Hoyt said, Ted Turner is starting a 24-hour news channel. I said, well, that's never going to work. Called CNN. Yeah, I'm like, who wants to watch that for 24 hours? Well, there we go.
Apparently a lot of people. The one thing too, wrapping up the social media aspect too, there's some bad things with it, but at the same time, like everyone, I guess as a news gathering source, like you can reach out to the people, and now more than ever, they can, accumulate the photos or the videos or whatever. So like everybody has their own little reporter's camera, and in some way it must be beneficial to be able to reach out to people and say, may we use this, because it helps tells the story.
It does. It is. We've got all these extra eyes and ears out there, and it's important that all be vetted, of course. And every once in a while you'll see incredible tornado things show up, and and if you do the reverse Google search on it or whatever, it was shot 10 years ago in Kansas or something, not in Fenimore. But so you have to be careful about that. But it is Yeah, and I would say the positives of social media. I mean, I built such a relationship with viewers. I tried to answer everybody who wrote into me as long as they weren't, nasty.
Mm.
And that just built up when people feel like they can talk to the person they're watching on TV and they learn about, when my mom was dying or whatever, and I would share just my visits to her and things like that. That's what, makes you seem more of a person, which we are.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I tell my colleagues too. If you can show that side of yourself, people do love it. So they can interact with you there. Now it can get a little overwhelming at times on the weekends when people are reaching out and you're trying to have that work-life balance, but most of the time, it's not that hard to just get back to people, and then they feel valued. Like, oh, the news guy answered my question.
Right. Yeah. That's probably easier now with email. Well, it probably got easier with email, right? As
Oh
opposed to
God,
people would write
yes.
you. Would people write you letters? Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
and sometimes some of the older viewers still will, and then
Okay.
you're trying to find a way. Now, I mean, now back in the day it was the typewriter and
Yeah.
fixing all the mistakes and all that, and now it's easier when people email or just on Messenger.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I still think social media has a lot of advantages, positives. For example, I look at GoFundMe or things like that, where in the legitimate cases of need, and people are good. So many people are good-hearted, and they see someone in need, and they can reach out and help easily that way. You got to check those things out, make sure they're legit, just like anything. But it's a great, there are a lot of positives there, and allowing us to just be more one-on-one with viewers.
Mm-hmm. All right. Are you ready for random question time? Because I either do random question time
Sure.
now or start talking about AI in the future and news, and we could get 2-hour podcast and get me started on all the fake stuff we're going to have to deal with that.
Okay.
All right. Random question time. When did you know you wanted to be a broadcaster?
Watching Johnny Carson in middle school.
Oh, wow.
I would say I used to, I'd watch Johnny Carson, and I thought, wouldn't that be great to grow up and interview people, Ed? And, and just grow up and interview interesting people who are just different, unique. News by definition are people, events that are exceptions to the norm. So realizing that I was never going to be Johnny Carson, because there's only a couple of those jobs.
Right.
TV news was the next best thing.
Oh, okay. TV. All right. I want to ask you about the glasses. You never always wore glasses, but you have recently.
Right.
Now, people love to comment, right or wrong, on I feel like on news anchors' appearances all the time, and they have like no filter.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, "I hate your shirt," or "That dress is awful." They're like, who are you?
Mm-hmm.
When did the glasses change happen? Because it's fairly recent, if I'm not mistaken. And have you gotten comments on your glasses, both negative and positive?
Mostly positive. One guy came up to me in public and said, "You look like a damn owl." And I said, "Well, thank you." He said, "That's not a compliment." And stormed off. And I thought, oh, okay. But most people really like. I think those are my other glasses, were even more like owl eyes. But
okay.
A lot of people have asked me where I got them. I got them at Iopia on Monroe Street, and these are, I think, like a French glasses or something. And yes, people love. I was really lucky to have. So my wife Anna has sort of restylized me. I used to be like a baggy suit guy, and then she's like, "Oh no, you got to get a custom suit and all this." So I went to a guy, Mitch at Fine Line, who like, they make these suits, and it costs more, but I'm like, I'm on TV, I should look the best I can. So most people will like them, and every once in a while someone will say, I saw a post the other day where someone said, sometimes it looks like he buys his ties at the thrift store, but others are really fantastic. And I'm like, it is funny, because fashion is, one of those things that's in the eye of the beholder.
Sure.
And the glasses, honestly, I have really good eyesight, but it has helped. It did clarify things a little bit, and I didn't have to wear the reading glasses all the time because I have little bifocals here. So
Sure.
I've never wore contacts in my life.
Mm,
I didn't start wearing glasses till about 5, 6 years ago.
okay. All right. Have you ever gotten the giggles on the air where you just maybe somebody said something and you're like, oh my gosh, I got to keep it together?
Two things come to mind. In '83, I believe, I
Okay.
used to do morning cut-ins, and Bob Lindmeyer was the weather guy for those.
Okay.
And I right before they cued him coming out of the commercial, for some reason I just went Bob, 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 like that. And they said cue, and he just started laughing like like this, like for he couldn't talk. And he said, Duh, John told a really bad joke before we went on air. And I kind of started laughing during that. And then Lee Mills, who I've co-anchored with the longest, and I have had some funny moments. One time she was talking, the story was about a nutmeg
Okay.
recall of the spice nutmeg, and she said nutbag. And so she said a nutbag recall, and so we started laughing just because it was just
Silly.
funny. And yeah,
Oh, that's
you
good.
know, and then there are times when those are two of them that come to mind. And I never had the hiccups somehow on air. I don't know, have you?
No, never. And I've
Yeah.
never even thought about it until this moment.
Mm-hmm. Sorry
Yeah.
about that.
Okay, great. But I do have a cure for hiccups. I saw it from a podcaster. You inhale, you inhale again, and you do it again, and you hold that for 15 to 20 seconds, maybe 30, and then you slowly let it out. And then the hiccups. It
Oh, I can
worked
see
twice on
that.
my daughter. So I don't know.
Oh, okay. All
Maybe
right. Yeah.
So I'll remember that because now I feel like I've jinxed myself. A
Yeah.
few more questions. What will you miss the most? What will you miss the least about your profession?
I will miss the most the team that I worked with. We just had such a blast of Dukes and Jocko and Lee and Maria and everybody. We just were really good friends. And the news, it's the excitement of being on the front page of history as it unfolds. Good Lord, especially the last few years between elections and the pandemic and street riots and racial justice protests and everything. It's just been, you're part of history, and so I'll miss that. What I won't miss, and I actually have been tapered off to 10 o'clock for about 6 weeks before I retired, is the hours and the feeling of back timing when you work second shift. That I've got to be in at 1:30, so I got to be in the shower by 12:30, and I got to, your whole life is back time. And then when you're 62, working in a profession where you have to look awake at 10:30 at night is something I won't miss.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But really, many more positives than negatives. And I feel lucky that what I did for a living was challenging at times, but not nearly as hard or not nearly as important as what so many other people do, whether they be teachers or paramedics or firefighters, police officers, whatever, military.
3 more things for you. On our to-do list as a family this summer, we made a list of things we wanted to do in the summer. I put kayaking at sunset. Now, you're a big kayaker, like you said.
Yes.
I've never kayaked at sunset. Is there a great time to kayak? Is that a good time? And have you done that?
I have. I've done it after sunset. You have to keep in mind safety and the law. You do have to have one white light on a kayak or canoe. I have a suction cup light. You can get them at places like REI or Rutabaga, I'm sure. And just so you have to have a light, and then probably a headlamp. And remember that you want to stay closer to shore when it's dark, it's just so boats can see you. It's spectacular. It's really cool to go out there at sunset. The law is from sunset until sunrise. You have to have a light. And so that's something to keep in mind. But if you can do it safely, it is. it's spectacular after sunset too. You hear fish jumping. You want to bring bug spray, but it's pretty cool. It's very serene, and especially if someone has some experience doing it. I wouldn't want a newbie out there at night.
Okay.
But it's fun. Yeah. And this is a great kayaking area.
Yeah.
So many options.
Okay. Excellent. That's on our to-do list. You mentioned something on your final newscast too in the 6 o'clock. You thanked your parents and you told a story about how they drive out to the countryside to listen to the radio. Because you were on the radio at the beginning. Is that correct?
Yeah. When I was senior year in college, I worked at WIBA AM and did weekend and weekend evening newscasts.
Yeah. And I thought that was so cool because I know my parents, they're 4.5 hours away, but my dad has like this really powerful radio, and at night AM signals can reach pretty far. And so they've tuned in to try to listen to broadcasts. And it reminded me of some things my parents have done too. But I thought that was a really cool story. My
parents were just wonderfully supportive. And, you could tell they were very proud along the way. And it just really, warmed my heart. And I remember back then, and the young people in the newsroom said, "Oh, that's right. There was no streaming." So I said, "Yeah, you had to be, within the range of the signal." And so they lived in the Fox Valley. And I think they said they drove down to the Ripon area and they could pick it up a couple of different weekends. Back then it was maybe you were able to put a cassette tape in and mail it up to them. They could listen that way, but they wanted to hear it live. So, it's, just like anything, whether you play volleyball for UW or football or whatever, and your parents are in the stands, it means the world to a kid.
And then just finally, Mark McPherson is taking your spot on NBC 15. I don't know how much more contact you'll have with anybody at the whatever, but he and I went to college together. So next time you see him, ask him about the Jams show. Or it's a radio show. It was John and Mark show. We did a radio show and it was all hip-hop.
Jams.
Oh,
yeah, wow. So well, I'll have to ask him to do some rap next time I see him then. And hip hop. Mark is great. He's got a good sense of humor and he's stepped right in. And it's not always easy to take over for somebody who's been somewhere for a long time. So but he's fantastic. He has connections to the Midwest, as Winona State. And he worked in Milwaukee, worked in Wausau, and I think it was Eau Claire, or La Crosse, one or the other. And so I felt so good knowing that the male equation of the evening anchor team that Mark was taking over. He was a great hire. So the Jams show. Okay, yes. I got it.
Yes,
I got it. Well, maybe he'll do some hip hop on the air.
Yeah, that would be. Well, I don't know if we want that or not. I don't know if that's going to help ratings. But John, thank you so much for joining the podcast today. We're going to get you out to a volleyball match at the University of Wisconsin.
I would love that.
Yeah. And no, when I saw your final show, I was just like, oh my gosh, he's done so many amazing things throughout his career, the 7 continents, the 30 countries, the bear wrestling, all of it. And I was like, I need to talk to John Stofflet.
Well, I'm so glad you've reached out, John. This was a lot of fun. And I feel very fortunate. I've had a fantastic career, and just a big, I thank you to all of the listeners and viewers out there who have sent me well wishes. It's much appreciated. Okay. Well, thank you so much once again for taking the time, and best of luck in your retirement and all the fun things you'll be doing, post broadcasting. Thanks. We'll see you at a Badger game. There it is. There it is. On Wisconsin. Yeah. All right, John. Thanks, John. All right, there you go. That is John Stofflet, retired
news anchor from NBC 15. Once again, thanks to John. We'll get him off to a volleyball match. Thanks to everyone who voted for the Johncast podcast as the best of Madison. I don't know what happens next. We're going to see what happens next, and then I'll let you know. And maybe we'll have a pizza party like we're in elementary school or something like that. That's always fun. You can always check out johncastpodcast.com, listen to past podcast episodes. If you have a suggestion of anyone you'd like to hear on this podcast, just send them my way on Twitter at JohnAudiusRadio, or just get in contact with me through johncastpodcast.com. Once again, thanks to John Stofflet. Thanks to you for listening to this edition of the podcast. See ya.